So the NFL schedule, of course, came out a few days ago, and with that come, people discussing the most entertaining games on the schedule and team predictions and everything in between. And as you guys can see in today's video, we are going to be discussing the Minnesota Vikings schedule, and we are going to be breaking down every game. Now, the Vikings are an interesting team to discuss in 2021 because they are in a division with Aaron Rodgers, and really who knows if he plays for the Packers in 2021, and they are also in a division with now Justin Fields. Not only that, but they were a team in 2020 that competed at times and oftentimes otherwise looked, pretty bad. So it's going to be interesting to see how this team plays in 2021. Are they going to be a legitimate playoff team, or are they going to be a cellar dweller? Now, we're going to break down every game in today's video, but before we get started, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as each only take a second to do, and it would be very much appreciated. Now let's begin. Now, before we dive into all the games, and first we would dive into at Cincinnati and at Arizona, I do want to say this is a roster that is not that far from heavily contending. And before you say, oh, what an idiot, whatever, I'm going to back that up with some things. They beat Green Bay in Lambeau last year. That was certainly not an easy win, and they beat them, right? And not only did they do that, but they also competed heavily with the Bucs. And I know, the final score was 26-14, and that ultimately is a double-digit win for the Bucs. But what I'm going to say is, if you actually watched that game, I'm not going to get too much into it because, anyway, what I'm going to say is they were not that far apart from Tampa, and Tampa was certainly on the ropes with Minnesota, and the Vikings did do a lot of things to beat themselves. Dan Bailey missed 3 or 4 kicks that day, but what I'm saying is this team played the Bucs last year in what was a must-win game for them at the time because they were 6-6. They played them a lot better than what the Chiefs showed in the Super Bowl. So to think this team is not good, or to just automatically write them off because, oh, they have Kirk Cousins as their quarterback, or whatever other take we just want to say that's usually pretty lazy, that's not the case. So at Cincinnati, if there ever is a must-win Week 1 game, this is it. The following 3 games are at Arizona, home against Seattle, and home against Cleveland. So if you start out 0-1 against a team you should beat, then that's probably going to be the start of what would be a long year for the Vikings. Now, I'm not going to say that's an easy game because you're playing, and we assume at this point Joe Burrow will be back. The last I've heard is he is, ahead of his recovery process or the timeline, so good for him, and I hope he does play, and I hope he has a very good, successful year too. But you're playing a young quarterback, a good offense with Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and of course the number 5 overall pick, Jamar Chase. As tough as that's going to be, you have to win that game. There's no excuse for that. You have to go in and win. The Bengals defense is and there's a reason they were selecting top 5, right? It had more to do than just Joe Burrow tearing his ACL, unfortunately, for them. So this is a must-win game for the Vikings due to the following next 3 games. Now, at Arizona, I'm not saying this is going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. Kyler is a very good quarterback. He's going to have a very good receiver in DeAndre Hopkins, but their defense is not all that good, and this is a very winnable game. Again, it's not going to be an easy one, as the Buffalo Bills, who made it to the AFC Championship game last year, lost to the Arizona Cardinals in that stadium. So to say it's going to be an easy win would be false. But to say it's a winnable game would not be false, and the Vikings could very easily start out 2-0, as easily as they could start out 0-2. So, Weeks 3 and Week 4 are the Seahawks and the Browns. Now, Russell Wilson has never lost to the Minnesota Vikings, and the last time they went to Minnesota in the regular season was 2015. Of course, we all remember the Blair Walsh game, but they also did play a few weeks earlier in the regular season, which the Seahawks beat them 38-7. Now, if that happens again, I would be shocked. But this will be Russell Wilson's first career regular season game at US Bank Stadium, so who knows how it's going to be. And not to say, the crowd's going to be loud and Russell can't deal with that. I'm not saying that. But it's going to be an interesting game, right? Week 3, the Vikings home opener post-COVID. It's going to be a fun game, and it's definitely winnable for both teams. Now, whoever comes out of that is going to be determined, but it is a winnable game for both teams, and it is the same case with Week 4 against the Browns. It will be Kevin Stefanski's homecoming, if you will. He worked in the Minnesota Vikings organization for over a decade, and he knows this team very well, so I'm going to be honest, with as talented of a roster as the Browns have, and as much as Kevin Stefanski knows about the Vikings and Mike Zimmer, I would be very surprised if the Vikings win that one. Not to say it's not unwinnable, because it is, but I would be genuinely surprised if they come out victorious in Week 4 against the Cleveland Browns. So through the first 4 games, I do think this team can very easily be 3-1. Now they can be 1-3, but I do think for today's video, I'm predicting them to be 3-1. So the next 2 games are home against Detroit and at Carolina. Detroit, I'm going to keep it sweet here. The only win they have in US Bank Stadium were 2016 and 2017, and it was a much different team that they had back then versus now. And I don't think they're going to go into US Bank Stadium and win. You know, coming off of what would be the 3rd straight home game for the Vikings. Let's just leave it at that. At Carolina is the next game, and this is going to be a tough one. I do think Sam Darnold will rejuvenate his career at least a little bit in Carolina. He's going to have a lot more help than what he had in New York, but I do think Mike Zimmer can make a young quarterback struggle, as he's done a lot of times in his coaching career before, and quite honestly, I do think the Vikings will be 5-1 heading into their Week 7 bye. So the next 3 games, as you see, are home against Dallas off the bye, at Baltimore, and at the Chargers. And as I said, I do think the Vikings start out 5-1, though they could start out, worse than that. But 5-1 to 5-4 is a lot more realistic than people would probably want to admit, as Dallas is good, Baltimore and the Chargers are also good, and the likelihood they win all 3 is very, very low, I would say. And the Vikings lost to the Cowboys last year, and what irritates me as a Vikings fan, I'm just going to kind of vent for a minute, is they'll lose to a Matt Moore, a Chase Daniel, one of those guys, and then they'll go beat an Aaron Rodgers. So go figure, right? Now, Dak, I would not be surprised if they do beat the Cowboys, and they lost to the Cowboys last year with Andy Dalton. That's another quarterback that they just, tend to lose to for whatever reason. But then they'll go beat a Dak Prescott, right? So it's kind of what I'm getting at here. I wouldn't be surprised if they win, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they lose. This is a Sunday night coming off the bye, and for today's video, I think they go 6-1 and beat the Cowboys. Now, at Baltimore, there's going to be a lot going on here. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I do think they lose in Baltimore, so 6-2. Now, at the Chargers, Justin Herbert, is he going to be able to keep up what he had in his rookie season? That's going to be extremely tough. And given that they're going from Baltimore to LA and, the whole cross country, and granted it is, a couple days in between travel, I don't think the Vikings are going to be able to go out to SoFi and beat them. So I do think they will start the year out 6-3 through the first 9 games. So coming off of back-to-back losses on the road to come home and get potentially Aaron Rodgers is certainly not ideal, and it could be 3 straight losses coming off the bye. So this team could very well start out 5-1 and be 5-4 pretty quickly, and then have to face the Packers and then at the 49ers. So Vikings fans, there's a very real possibility they start out 5-1 and then go 5-6. Now, I don't want that to happen, obviously, but the teams that they play coming off the bye are certainly not easy. And for today's video, I do think they are going to beat the Packers at home. Generally, we do split with the Packers, and I have a hard time seeing us get swept by them, considering we did beat them with a less talented roster last year and with players that were out that were pretty impactful, like Anthony Barr and Danielle Hunter at times last year. So I have a hard time seeing us lose, 4 straight off the bye, and even though I did predict us to beat the Cowboys, I wouldn't be surprised if we lose to them. Now, at San Francisco, kind of the same thing with Baltimore. I'm just going to keep it short and sweet. I don't think they go out there and win. I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because I think they have the talent to. This team is not what they were 2 years ago. Not to say they're a bad team, San Francisco fans, because I'm not saying that, but I do think the 49ers will beat the Vikings in Santa Clara. Now, at Detroit, again, I just think the Vikings are going to out-talent them, and there's times where teams upset other teams, but I think over the course of a 60-minute game, the Vikings generally, knock on wood, the table you can't see, but it is wood, so they're probably not going to lose to the Lions this year, and I do think Dan Campbell is going to prove to be a good coach. I just don't think in year 1 he's going to be able to match up with Mike Zimmer and his Vikings. Year 2 and beyond, though, I don't want to say fearful, but I would be a lot more concerned than when I am in year 1 of the Dan Campbell era. So, for those keeping track, we do have them starting out 8-4, though I do think it could go either way by a game or 2. And the final 5 games of the year, as you'll see, are home against Pittsburgh on a Thursday, at Chicago, home against the Rams, at Green Bay on Sunday night, and home against the Bears. And the Steelers game, I do think the Vikings will ultimately win. It will be Ben Roethlisberger's final ride, and for them to come in on a Thursday night already on a short week, I think is going to be incredibly difficult for them. And I could see them winning, don't get me wrong, but I do think the Vikings will take the cake and start out 9-4. Now, the next game is not easy by any means, and it is at Chicago on Monday night, and the Vikings generally struggle out there. I do think they can win, though, and, we have them starting out 9-4, and Justin Fields or Andy Dalton, whoever's starting at that point in time, it's not going to be an easy game. And for that reason, I do think the Vikings are going to lose, so 9-5 for everyone keeping track. Now, Matt Stafford and the Rams coming in Week 16, not going to be another difficult game. The 9-5 Vikings are going to be on the brink of a playoff spot at that point. what playoff spot is going to be the question. And I'm going to be honest, I think Sean McVay will get the last laugh, so that will put the Vikings at 9-6. Now, this is going to be tough. At Green Bay and home against Chicago to finish the year is never easy. And it's going to be on a Sunday night in January in Green Bay. So, who's going to be quarterbacking the Packers by then is going to be determined, right? But if Aaron Rodgers is, I think the Vikings lose, which would put them at 9-7. But if he's not, then I think they will be 10-7, or 10-6. But we don't know that for today's video, so at this point we have to assume that Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback. So I will have the Vikings starting out 9-7, and then with what we would assume would be a must-win game, we will have the Vikings finishing at 10-7 for today's video. And that is all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to do more schedule breakdowns for your team or for whatever, let me know. The second channel video will be up soon, and shout out everyone that commented on the community post a couple days ago, and it will be up, and I hope you guys have a great day. Until next time, love you guys. Deuces.